Alex, how are you?
Hey girl, I'm great. How are you? I'm just getting some design work done.
Great. I just have a couple of questions for you. I'd love to introduce you to our YouTube channel, so if you wouldn't mind answering a couple of them.
Oh, sure. Yeah, shoot away.
What does a typical day look like for you?
Gosh, really diving right in. So I would say, like today, I'm kind of working on some design elements, building some tablescapes. I would say day-to-day changes, typically on a Monday, we might kind of do some internal planning, team prep, building up for weddings. Throughout the week, really building almost a flow for our clients. What that could look like is covering certain milestones. A lot of the times with our couples, we'd like to celebrate their milestones. So that might look like a 12-month mark, an 8-month mark, a 6-month mark. All of these different milestones, we're doing different activities. We might be doing a walkthrough, maybe we're doing a tasting together, I'm building a layout, all these details, about 1,000 details in a wedding day. How do we want that napkin color to look against our plate? Do we want velvet? Do we want cotton? All these little things, or trinkets, if you will, bells and whistles to enhance that day for that couple. So, it really could vary. I could be going on walkthroughs typically on a Thursday. Friday, we're really going into prep and install. And Saturday, we have wedding day, which is obviously the best day. I think it varies day to day, but we like to have a little bit of formality in terms of, what that day to day, week to week looks like, especially for our client. We want them to feel organized, in control, with that checklist, etc. What else you got for me? Well, as you can see here, I'm kind of setting a tablescape right now for a client. I am just obsessed with greens coming through on the wedding day. What this could look like is maybe I pair a really fun pattern plate in that green color, or I pulled some swatches here for our client to kind of take a look at. Could we bring in green in that table setting? I'm really loving this new pattern from Nuage, as you can see. Green on the wedding day has been one of my favorite trends for this year, but there's other things that I'm loving too. Preparing a styled shoot in the coming weeks, and it's gonna be vintage glam. And what that's gonna look like is black and white, maybe some vintage piping on the cake. We might throw in some disco balls. We're definitely gonna have a martini tower. These are just some fun examples of really taking what the couple is wanting and what they're liking in terms of color palette, or maybe a picture. All I need is a swatch, one picture, or a color that they're obsessed with, and then we'll take it from there. I think it's so important for our team to recognize, it's not just what we want for design, but it's what the couple wants for design too. And really understanding, when their guests walk in and they experience that guest experience, they're walking in and saying like, wow, this is like so them, and not just another wedding on the shelf or another wedding on the calendar. I think that customization is key, but you can see here in terms of trends, I'm loving the baby's breath incorporation, bringing that back from 2008, but in a better way. I'm loving the vintage piping on cakes, just loving this green accent. I'm also into the mustard looks. I pulled some of these swatches here that kind of show you that mustard look. Pastel, papa yellow, mustard in the fall. There's so many ways to do it, I feel like we're here, we live life, we all make mistakes, but I think that from your wedding pros, you should really trust your wedding pros to guide you on the things that maybe they've seen gone well or have seen, gone awry. Really think about what your experience and what matters to you and your guest experience. Is the dance party super important? Is the formality of the food style super important? Is the color palette, the flowers really important? I think that it's really thinking about what are those important things that matter to you as a couple and really putting that money towards that. I absolutely always recommend a professional photographer. They are trained to get the details of the day. They're trained to kind of guide you through the photography process. They're there and they're trained to really understand you as a couple. Definitely do that engagement session. Definitely meet them before the day. I think it's so important. It's all about that connection. I think another thing is really thinking about that food service style in terms of the do's and don'ts, right? I think in the South, something that we celebrate is being able to have station style versus plated style. Station style is going to be somewhere where you have that smaller dinner plate. You have a chef behind a station. They're preparing that whipped potato and that short rib. They're doing a smaller portion on this plate, and you take it back to your seat, you eat it, and then you're up again maybe at a shrimp and grit station after that. If you're doing plated, let's look at this plate comparison here. You have that big plate versus that small plate. I think the plated meal obviously is going to be one type of meal or a split service style where you're having like steak and a chicken, or you're having, a really lovely prepared seafood dish, but your guest is only eating once off of this plate through the night, and then they're off to the next style. If you're doing station style, I would consider this more mingling, and what that's gonna look like is that I'm gonna eat that short rib, I'm gonna finish, it's gonna get taken away, I'm gonna go back up to the station and get maybe my prepared pasta plate, and then come back and sit down, and I'm grazing elegantly through that 4-hour period. That's a big don't that I see a lot with couples, is they try to merge both of them together, and they're not, one, offering enough seating, or they're, two, offering too much formality to what a seated dinner looks like, and not being precise on the style of service they're doing. Seated dinners require more blocking in the timeline. Station style requires more flow of the evening. I mean, that's just a few. There's so many I could list, but I think that that's a great tidbit for now.
In your years of experience, have you encountered any wedding disasters, and how did you handle those?
I mean, definitely a few. I think that the beauty about us having a larger team, us having, lead planners, multiple lead planners, is where we can kind of really come in and, have that understanding and be prepared for disasters. Just the other week, beautiful fall day, it's October, you're kind of coming out of that hurricane season. We were at this beautiful kind of estate style venue, all grassy, not, an enclosed venue. We have a tent look here. What this looks like is that, we're watching the weather radar. We've invested in the rain plan tents, which is a great kind of safe scape for an outdoor venue. We had the tents. The weather looked clear that day. There was a little rain in the morning. We set up under the tents. All was dry, all was well. The sky is clear. As soon as I'm about to send the bridal party down the aisle, I can kind of just see this like flash storm tumbling in, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, let's just hold off until we can get under the tent, essentially. That storm is rolling in. Our team is kind of trying to rush into getting that bridal party up the aisle so we can get that couple married, that most important piece. And then as soon as we're about to send the bride up the aisle, that storm kind of comes in, and you think it's just gonna be rain here because that is kind of what we've been seeing in the morning, but no, it ended up being like hurricane gust winds blowing through. The entire limoncello tower was knocked over, which was supposed to be a cocktail hour grab right after ceremony. There's no way to hold it back. All that glass shatters. The bar construction, which is a wooden facaded bar, the topper flies off. The band's equipment is like blowing. The cake's about to blow over. We have cupcakes kind of going wild. At the same time, we're trying to send the bride up the aisle. So this was definitely a high stress moment. Thankfully, us having, a larger team allowed us to have multiple members on the day. And where that really helped us is that some team members went straight to the kind of disaster zone under the tent for the reception, started to kind of put back together fallen chairs, fallen bar, pick up glassware, while the other kind of couple team members were there to kind of stay calm, collected, and get that bride fully covered in an umbrella cascade and up the aisle so she can be with her groom that day. It was really amazing to see how quickly something could turn and how quickly something can kind of just react on the day. And really having a vendor team that is, in that problem solving mode mindset is just so key. Having planners really saved her on the day so that she didn't have to worry about that in a moment where she's about to walk up the aisle. It's wild.
Awesome, thank you.
Great question. I got married in Charleston. I love the low country vibe there. We did it at a beautiful historic home in that area. We had an intimate wedding, about 80 people, seated dinner. I had been in the planning industry for a little bit at this point, so I kind of knew what I was liking. But there are definitely things today, after kind of being, a handful of years in the past already, things that I probably would have spent more time or more money with was really investing in certain vendors a little bit more. So I think flowers really change a space. I was very budget conscious about my flowers. That's something that I kind of wish I had invested more in on the wedding day. I had a vintage car, I had a seated dinner, I invested in an elevated chair, which I loved. I also might invest in a bigger photography vendor team. You know, I had a beautiful photography album given to me. I had a family friend, you know, participate in that for me, and she gave this to me, and it was stunning photography work. But I wish I had hired more for her team so that there could have been more details captured. One of the other things, so silly and so small to think about, but a dance floor. You know, I had a cemented dance floor area, so I felt that I didn't need a dance floor. But now doing more and more design like you see here, you know, I think a dance floor really defines a space. That really just helps give a pop, it defines the palette of that space, and it continues that cohesiveness of the design. So that is one thing that I often think about that I probably would add back if I could go back in time.
Awesome, thank you.
I mean, I think that we're blessed that we live in such an area that has so many beautiful and unique venue spaces. We do weddings in Charleston, Charlotte, Greenville, Columbia. I think it's really great that we're able to experience, you know, estates, cigar factories that have been redone, ballrooms, rooftops. We can really see it all. And what's beautiful is that we have so much natural outdoor elements. We're really thankful to have that kind of landscape to work with. One thing I'm excited for the next year is that we do have some traveling under our belt. So we're headed to Florida, we're headed out to Mexico. You know, just last year we were in San Francisco and Chicago. We're a traveling company. We're able to kind of branch out and go and experience other locations, other cities, other vendor teams, and you get to experiment with different styles. So I'm excited to see these different styles that we'll be experimenting in these other cities in the coming year.
So now that we know a little bit more about Alexandra Madison Weddings, we'd love to know a little bit more about Alexandra Madison. So what does a typical day off look like for you?
Oh gosh, you know, I will say that I'm pretty invested in the wedding sphere itself, and I live and breathe it, and you have to be passionate about this to be able to get into something like this. But what I kind of typically see is, you know, on a day off, you know, if we have no weddings, we're kind of, you know, able to kind of, you know, relax a little bit. That's maybe where I would, you know, take a trip out of town. I love traveling. I'm originally from Toronto, Ontario in Canada. I ended up landing in the South, and I'm obsessed with the Southern area. My husband and I love to travel. We might go to West Palm, we might go visit family in Toronto, we might go, you know, somewhere tropical, we might, you know, go to a bigger city. It's so nice to be able to travel out of town and really kind of experience new foods, maybe shows, productions. One of my biggest inspirations is going to other productions and really seeing what is that decor, what is that set like, what are things, you know, going to creative restaurants, maybe that, you know, incorporate a garden theme or Alice in Wonderland. That's really where I get inspired for my work. And I think that that is important, that I continue to travel, continue to see these places, go, you know, abroad to Europe and experience this so that I can then essentially bring that back for our clients and couples. Maybe I find a fabric that I love or a material that I can incorporate. I was just in New York the other weekend. We were in a hotel and it was just so well designed. They had vintage crystal vases that they had like multiple of and used as candle centerpieces behind a lounge. And I was just like, this is just such a small addition to design, but so impactful. That's something I can bring back to my clients now as we kind of plan what their venue vignettes look like, you know?
Thank you so much for chatting with us.
It was great to see you. I look forward to kind of chatting with you guys again soon.